I'm admiraling. And he said, well, have you got that video with you? Can you show me the video? And I said, yeah. And then, you just plug it in and play it. So we plugged it in for him. He started watching it, and after about 5 minutes, he told the staff, I canceled my, he had a meeting with someone in 15 minutes. He says, first he said, I'll be late, and then next it was cancel, and then I'm going to be here till this is over. So he watched the whole thing just over half an hour. A few minutes later, the admiral calls down and says, I set up a briefing tomorrow morning at 9 or 10 o'clock, what it was. In the round room, bring all the stuff you have, bring everybody up there, and give them whatever they want. And we want to get out of it, just let them do whatever they want to do with it. They brought in 3 people from the FBI, 3 people from the CIA, and 3 people from Reagan's scientific study team, and I don't know who the rest of the people were. But they were all excited. When they got done, they actually swore all these other guys into that this never took place. We never had this meeting, and this was never recorded. He said this is the first time they ever had 30 minutes of radar data on a UFO, and they're all itching to get their hands into the data and to find out what it is and what really goes. And if they come out and told the American public that they ran into a UFO out there, it would cause panic across the country, so therefore you can't talk about it. And they're taking all this data. So I said, okay, take all the data. That's what you want. But they took only what we had there. They didn't ask me if there was anything else that I had. They said they're taking all this data. And I said, fine. Now, I had the original video that I took, and I had the pilot's report that came through, the first report, and I had the FAA's first report that was all downstairs on my table. They didn't ask for that, so I didn't give it to them. When they asked me what I thought, I told them that it looked like we had a UFO that was up there. The reason it wasn't on the FAA's tapes was because it was too large of an aircraft, and it was picked up as weather, so we wouldn't record it. That the pilot, the Japanese pilot, seen it. The Japanese pilot drew pictures of it. Eventually, they gave the Japanese pilot a hard time because of what he said. He was embarrassing his country. Our military controllers said they seen it. Our FAA controllers said they seen it. Our FAA controllers, after a period of time, came back and said they really didn't see a target. They saw something else, which makes it sound like somebody is helping them fill out the reports, and therefore that looks suspicious. My guess is, because of the way it was, it's not part of the military's operation anymore, that it was a UFO. But who do you tell that you were involved in a UFO incident without them looking at you like you ain't wrapped too tight?
Captain Kenju Teruchi was piloting a Boeing 747, Japan Airlines, from Paris, France to Tokyo over the polar route. And I interviewed him by phone. I'm the only civilian to interview this gentleman, after he and his crew had a major sighting over northern Alaska on their way to Anchorage to land for refueling. And as a result of his following the rules, which he did, making a report out, landing safely, delivering the cargo, being a good pilot, Japan Airlines asked him to not fly anymore. I have over 3,000 cases now. A certain proportion are certainly historical that I've not interviewed myself, because in some of them they're so old I wasn't even alive. I wasn't born yet. And many of them come from Project Blue Book, which is the official Air Force study of the subject. And I would say in half of the cases at least, the phenomenon appears to approach the airplane, not the other way around. It's as if the aircraft is the focus of attention or curiosity, if I may use that word, of the phenomenon. That the pilot's flying along, minding his own business, and something comes up alongside one wing for 15 minutes at cruise altitude, cruise speed, and then sometimes we'll flip over to the other wing or stay right at the nose of the aircraft and then do barrel rolls along the flight axis. Some very interesting maneuvers. I could say that at least in the non-black programs, we could not do what these objects were reported as doing. As a result of this review of my AirCant files, I found a number of cases back in the 60s, for instance, when the Air Force was still heavily involved in this subject, where they stepped in and interviewed, let's use the word, commercial pilots, not just their own military pilots, but commercial pilots, and ended the interview by saying, "You're not to tell anybody about what you saw."
And I got off duty one night at midnight and went to bed, and I was called and told to come fix the radar. There was something wrong with it. And so when I got up to CIC and I asked them what the problem was, they said, well, we're tracking an aircraft here at 3,400 miles an hour. And I said, well, there is something wrong. So I took that radar offline, put the standby radar online, and went to work. And I started running all the tests, and everything was normal. So as a result of talking with them, I said, I can't find anything wrong with the radar. But there was clearly, they had clear plots, and they told me, this is an absolute stellar contact, because you usually get the size of the blips, usually do with either the size of the contact or the shape, something, and this was a blip that was better than a half-inch across, which indicated a really large target, or something very close. So I asked the duty officer if he was going to report it, and he said no. And I said, why not? And he said, well, he says, you've just told me there's nothing wrong with the radar. You've run all the checks you can run. There's nothing wrong with the radar. We know we tracked the thing. If we report it, then Colorado Springs is going to ask us what's wrong with our equipment, and you've already said there's nothing wrong, so you and I then have a problem. We both are in trouble. We got to come up with a story. And he says, I'm not going to report it. It was one contact, that was it. So one night I was on the plot board, this was maybe 3 or 4 months later, and here comes this contact. And the second blip, you could see that this thing was moving. It was moving like 3 or 4 inches on a 360-mile scale. And so sure enough, I plotted it, and it was 3,400 miles an hour. And again, we didn't report it, but they said, you know, there's nothing wrong. This is our friend back, and away we went. And nobody thought anything about it. It was interesting. We didn't make a big deal out of it, but we sure like to know what that was. It happened at least 3 more times that I had radar operator friends that would tell me, well, we had another one of those fast ones last night.
And I was flying a flight from San Francisco to Boston, a DC-10, and we were about halfway between Buffalo and Albany at 37,000 feet. All of a sudden the airplane started, it was on autopilot. The airplane started at about a 15-degree bank, turned to the left, and of course I looked out the window automatically, that's what you do when the airplane starts to turn. And I saw this brilliant light off. It's hard to tell exactly how far out it is, but it was very, very bright. And the first officer saw it, and the second officer got out of his seat and took a look. About that time, the first officer hit the autopilot release button and went back to manual control. And as I was looking out the window, why, this thing that we had vision, this thing that we saw, disappeared back towards the left of the airplane and to our rear at a very rapid rate.
This next section of the video, of this briefing tape, is regarding the Strategic Air Command and nuclear facilities. I wish to emphasize that the witnesses we have here, again, are from diverse services. They range from the Atomic Energy Commission to people who have been at Strategic Air Command facilities and at missile launch control facilities throughout the United States and Canada. These witnesses give unmistakably clear testimony about the fact that these extraterrestrial vehicles appear to be quite concerned with our weapons of mass destruction. And in fact, more than one